Ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. There's a leak in the boiler room. The poor, the lame, the blind. Who were the ones that we kept in charge? Killers, thieves, and warriors. God's away, God's away, God's away on business.
Streatham, hello, Jonathan.
Well, good evening, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I had a few points to say to you, some of which you might agree with, some you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that I've had to move from the Harrow because of the cost of living.
Harrow?
Yeah.
You had to move from Harrow?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah, no,
Yes, I had to move from hello.
No, listen to me. I had to move
Speak
because
to me like that.
my business was doing okay. Not great, but okay last year because I told you I'm sorry I voted for the Brexit.
Yes.
I go into the shops now, and when I'm in the shops and walking about the streets, people look
Wait, back up. Are you saying that you're walking about the street in socks?
No, the stores, the groceries.
Oh, shops. Right, I thought that you were... Because I had a little mental image of you there just walking around the street just in your socks.
Disgusting.
Awful.
No, I will tell you this.
I mean, you can't even get away with that in Harrow.
When I came to Croydon first to see Oxford last year...
Croydon you could get away with it. I mean,
it was really
totally
hot in the summer
normal
last
for
year.
Croydon, yes?
It was really hot in the summer last year.
Phew, gosh, what a scorcher.
And when I got to East Croydon Station, there was, because I like to talk to everybody, and I was talking to some people.
Warning.
Do not talk to anybody in East Croydon Station. I think you will find that is excellent advice.
No, but then I saw that a dog had done the business on the platform, and the guys, they put on hazardous sort of signs, and I said to the workers, what is it? And they said a human had done the waste.
Oh, well, that sounds like East Croydon.
It was really shocking. But listen, before I go, can I just tell you that I know the economy is doing really badly.
Yes.
But we need there's a new young millionaire of Indian origin in America who is worth 100 million, and he was saying the biggest problem is now the wokies,
Oh, the wokey-cokey?
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
No, it's a serious problem because
sure. That's what's keeping us back. People having concern for others. Yeah, it's ruining humankind.
You need people in the government like the Ed Sheridan.
Ed Sheridan?
Because when he was interviewed about 10 years ago, one of the interviewers said, do you do a little bit of twerking? And he said, no, do not encourage the people to do the twerking. So he is of the good values. Him and also that actor, I saw he's always polite with people, David Radcliffe, the Harry Potter boy.
I've got no idea. Oh, Daniel Radcliffe, right. Yeah. But were you referring to Ed Sheeran?
Yeah, because the thing is, the music industry wants us all to be wokey, okay? And now listen to me, when an interviewer said to him, will you do the twerking?
Do the okey-cokey? He said, no, not now, not ever, never. Yeah, I don't have the hips for it, he said.
No, he said...
Well, he ain't got no rhythm, that's for sure.
No, he's excellent. He's a prophet. He's a gift from God.
Ed Sheeran, he is fantastic, yes?
No.
Not really.
No.
You have delighted us enough, Ed Sheeran, with all of your songs about, ooh, baby, I love your body. And then there was the one, ooh, baby, you've got a great body. And then there was the one about, baby, 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 press your body against me. I mean, Bob Dylan ain't got nothing on this guy. Do me a favour. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Harrow, Jonathan.
Hello?
Yes, Jonathan.
So I was listening to your speeches, actually. I'm back in Harrow now.
Yes.
And now, whenever I call you, your fans on the Twitter, they call me the crazy Uncle Jonathan from Harrow is talking about the wokey-cokey again.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
I say that as a joke, but it is a proper point I want to get to in a second, if I may. But this country is now, firstly, financially, I'm not doing good. Because I was in the Calcutta and the Abu Dhabi, and I took good flights, and I stayed in nice hotels for a month and a half, actually. And
well, that sounds
now
suspicious. What were you there for?
just business.
Oh, well, that's cleared that up. Business.
No, but,
business?
I was spending money in December thinking that things would be okay, like the country's economy would be okay, but it's not okay.
Big mistake.
So,
Huge.
I overspent in December, and then now the food is expensive. My water has gone up by the double.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the law and order, I had to chase a thug, female actually, who beat up my chicken shop owner on Tuesday.
What?
Yeah, it was a she, and she was... now, walkie-talkie means that there were some things about her I can't talk about.
Right.
But because we don't have the free speech, even you are like a rebel. You are like the Bobby Kennedy. But even you are a bit scared talking about a few things nowadays.
Well, I mean, there's certain things I don't want to talk about.
But everybody is now... For example, the Bobby Kennedy Jr., I did not know existed, and he has not been given, TV appearances for 20 years. You know, the Bobby Kennedy son. Anyway, so she punched the chicken shop owner.
Right.
And this country now, the police take so long to come. And the racism also means that the car handler kept saying to me, I can't understand what you're saying on
Right. Well, maybe they couldn't understand what you were saying.
No, listen to me. And I have to
I am listening to you.
Because of the militant feminism, I had to... No, it's true. Because of this, I had to keep... Because now the neighbor knocking... Wait a minute. I can't do nothing now.
Hang on a minute. So you're talking so loudly that your neighbour bangs on the wall?
No, because the point is, in this country now, you have to... A few months ago, I said to you that you can lose your job for a tweet, and your fans, they were on Twitter saying, Jonathan is a mental. And then people call you...
They probably didn't say that. But can we get back to the part where your neighbour is banging on the wall because you're shouting so loudly down the phone? So this means that they are really at the end of their tether, that they've had this up to their eyeballs and they just can't stand it anymore. So they're now reduced to banging on walls.
No, we are at the end of our tether. We had the little kiddies shooting the water guns at our houses. And I came out today and I said to the kiddies, Nick, what would you do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? Like if they
water guns. Water guns.
They're like 8-year-old little kiddies.
Right. And they're shooting water guns at your house.
Yeah, at the top window, just a little bit of water. And...
So what did you do?
We have to be so careful talking. Eminem, when he became famous, first of all, and kids used to knock on his door, he one day came out with a gun. I did not do that.
Eminem?
Yeah.
Are we actually talking about Eminem the rapper now? Eminem, that's where this conversation has gone. Eminem.
No, but what I did, I stepped out and I said, if you keep doing this, I'll call the police, lovely.
Oh, that'll stop them, yeah.
No, but then a woman and a man came in a car and said, mate, they're just little kiddies. We all have fun as kids. And then some of the kiddies said, those were my parents. I'm worried now I've got like a hit on me.
Well, don't stand next to me then. Jonathan, it's been... trying to find the word. Inspirational. It's been inspirational. But I really do have to go. And keep the noise down. You nightmare neighbour, you. Harrow, Jonathan. Harrow.
Good evening, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't want to disagree with you straight off the first point, okay? Okay, yeah, but I'm going to say a word with the innuendo.
Innuendo, yeah.
Because you're talking in innuendo about you're saying this is nothing wrong, and we don't have free speech in this country now. But I will ask you this. Why is the news not saying the age? Because Philip Schofield he's old, he's middle-aged man, yes?
Yeah.
He's like, 60 plus.
Is he?
Like late 50s. He's not a spring chicken.
No. No.
You know, he's not. He used to do that program when I first come to the country. He used to do the kiddies program with
some rat.
puppy.
Yeah, like a rat. I think it actually was a rat, wasn't it? Roland Rat. Exactly.
So the
That was
person
him. Was that?
say-
Hang on a minute. Was that actually him? Or are we thinking about somebody else? That wasn't
No,
Noel
that wasn't
Edmonds, because Noel Edmonds had Mr. Blobby,
Yeah. Wait.
who subsequently became the Prime Minister of this country. Can you believe that?
Yeah. So Philip Schofield, he had, and let's see how much the Wokie free speech allows me to say, because this
Wokie
issue,
Kokie.
Okie dokie.
Yes,
I've got nothing against the gays.
but
No, but how? Oh, no, I'm very tolerant.
Yeah.
I was actually reprimanded recently
for
by
your
my
tolerance,
chartered-
I can understand
No,
that. Yeah.
No, because I got the acronym wrong. It is actually now LZBTQIA plus.
Wait a minute. LBZTQIL plus.
Yeah, it is the whole acronym for the.
I'm fairly sure that that's not correct, but go
No,
ahead.
It is.
And by the
how
way,
old-
if I was a plus, I think I'd be offended. I mean, who are they to call me a plus, to lump me in with everybody else? Offensive. Plus,
You could lose, not you, but one could lose their Zab nowadays for not getting the pronouns correct. But I'll get onto that in a second.
oh,
How-
maybe you will. we'll
no,
see.
listen, I'm not going to...
We'll see.
What
Time
was
is
the
running
age?
out faster than you know. Go ahead.
What was the age? What was the age of the young person he had the affair with?
Legal, decent, honest, and true, as we have been told over and over
Okay.
again. Yeah, it wasn't illegal; it was just unwise. So he said.
Okay, but the legal age for both the gays and non-gays is 16 in this country. So what was the age?
Well, he was working there, so let's assume that he was older than that. What difference does it make?
Well, because if and this is where the walkie-talkie police come in.
God.
Because if it was a 16-year-old, and he's an
That's
old
very
man,
unlikely that it was, but if it was, it doesn't really make any difference. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, who cares?
well, he's an old man who's the big daddy of the Satan, and he's having
Big
the intimate
daddy.
physical relationship with the younger gay.
Right, but he wasn't chained to a radiator in his basement, was he? It was, as far as we know, it was consensual, and it has nothing to do with anybody. I just don't understand why this is such a big deal.
No, one of the woke feminist presenters on the news show, she was saying that there is an imbalance of power because nowadays, of course, if a man in the workplace...
That's always the case when a man will have an affair with anybody else. Because, A, he's married, so there is an imbalance of power there. If this relationship isn't going anywhere unless I get divorced. So there's always an imbalance there. Every affair that has ever existed between two grown people will always have a certain imbalance. I mean, one of them will earn more, one of them will be older, one of them will be bigger. There's always an imbalance. I don't really get what you're trying to say here, Jonathan.
But it is an anti-man agenda, but also...
What's an anti-man
okay?
agenda?
You know, nowadays in the workplace, even if you look at a woman and say, I would never say this because it's a lot of racism. But if you look, if you look at, I got reprimanded.
Yeah, well, I would think so, yeah.
No, I asked, when I came back from the Abu Dhabi, I needed a chartered accountant, but I'm not corrupt. And I
don't know that you shared this that you shared the information that you weren't corrupt straight away does rather ring bells of suspicion in my mind.
No, but can I just finally say that I had to?
Yeah.
I asked the accountant. Her pronouns were they them, and I wanted to know if she was a lesbian or a gay.
Right. Well, what's that got to do with counting? She was your accountant. All you needed to know was, can she count?
And one.
Yes.
Two.
That's right.
6 million.
Oh, bad accountant. If that's how your accountant adds, Jonathan, then time to get another accountant. And whatever it was you were going to say next, I think I've saved us all. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And they all had this. They went to what appears to be a rally. This conference, this National Conservatism Conference. 3 days. It filled a large Westminster venue directly across the road from the Home Office. attracting an array of ministers, Conservative MPs, high-profile political figures, and various assorted Fruit Loops. Yeah. The conference was run by an American group that professes to be concerned for Western civilization. And what is concerning them the most? People have lost the sense of traditional family values. Oh, Struth. They're these people.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Its speakers were all in on the war on woke. And they do this in America a lot. You know, American groups use religion as a weapon, despite appearing to me as though they'd be top of Jesus to smite list if he ever came back, using religion as a weapon. And if you think that these are only in America sort of things, then wake up, sheeple. It's later than you think. And there were endless speeches about trans people. Of course there was. Michael Gove held forth on biological reality, whatever that is. Conservative MP Miriam Cates claimed birth rates were the one overarching threat to the whole of Western society. You got that covered, haven't you, Bodge?
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Tory MP Danny Kruger praised the normative family. Are we alarmed yet? Smug was there too.
My view.
One speaker said that we shouldn't be afraid of nationalism, which is focusing on your own country's interests to the detriment of any other countries, and described the Holocaust as the Germans mucking up.
What?
The Holocaust. Mucking up. What's the German for whoopsie? Joe Mulhall, who's Director of Research of the counter-extremism group Hope Not Hate, said some speakers went beyond patriotism and embraced nationalism, while talk of demographic change, anti-immigration rhetoric, and the incompatibility of migrants with British society, and this notion of Western civilization being in decline. Well, under threat, more like. The rejection of non-typical family units. And, all that stuff that it really is aimed at the dingalings. They're trying to drag you in. They ain't got hope no more, so they're going with hate. Spread hate, not hope, and it might just drive you to win the next election, eh? And leading Tories were speaking there. I mean, Downing Street confirmed that ministers had attended this National Conservatism Conference in a government capacity. They're having a far-right rally, and it's OK with fishy Sunak. You know, they did this earlier on. This is not the first year that's happened. It happened in 2020. And when a Tory MP went in 2020, he was forced to apologise afterwards. There were calls for him to be booted out of his own party for appearing at that event. And now it's all OK. How far we've come in just 3 years. All OK under the new regime. Not too far to the right for fishy Sunak. 3 years and 2 prime ministers later, no such censure has been applied to the ministers. It was Daniel Kaczynski. He was formally warned that his attendance at that event in 2020 was not acceptable. That's what the government said then. The government says now, it's fine. The group's website, the National Conservatism Conference, proclaims, "We are citizens of Western nations who have watched with alarm as the traditional beliefs, institutions and liberties underpinning life in the countries that we love have been progressively undermined and overthrown." It calls for the restoration of a proper public orientation toward patriotism and courage, honour and loyalty, religion and wisdom, congregation and family, man and woman. Those are the only options available. Any other options are not acceptable. And you know, whenever I hear about some group spouting on about Jesus and the sanctity of marriage, and it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, I expect them to be photographed coming out of some closet in 3, 2, 1. There you are. And the only positive I can see is that these people's views, when they're exposed to sunlight, they repel the average person. We're not religious anymore. They're behind the times. We don't do God. The National Conservatism group's published statement of principles is heavily focused on Christianity, along with ideas of Western identity and traditional family. It's like Mary Whitehouse has woken from the dead. Hailing the Bible as the surest guide to the political traditions of the nation, the statement calls for public life in the UK to be rooted in Christianity. And this country says back,
No.
No. You live in the Dark Ages if you want, just don't drag the rest of us into your furious crimson world. And the reason I can say that with certainty is because there was a poll just recently, a major study, not a small study, huge. And we in this country are among the least likely on earth to believe in God. That ship's sailed and sunk. We just don't do that no more. Under half of the people that live in this country said that they believed in the existence of a higher power. Less than half. The majority don't. A couple of decades ago, 3/4 believed in it. Not no more. Levels were lower in just 5 of the 24 nations covered in this research, led by the Policy Institute at King's College in London. A drift away from religion. It's been happening for decades. A belief in life after death has remained fairly solid, though, which is just wishful thinking, isn't it? I mean, that's more people believe in life after death than believe in God. I think the two may be connected, unless the life after death is just some sort of holiday resort run by a hotel group, rather than a destination chosen for you by the all-seeing entity. And this all comes from the World Values Study. Huge analysis running since 1981. And a professor of social science at University College London said the findings point to both long-established erosion of religious involvement. The main story remains that most people in Britain are not interested in religion. And we got these Looney Tunes from America coming over here and shouting about God, as though God would be on their side. Adults under 40 are much more likely than older people to call themselves atheists, but also to say that they believe in hell, which might just be a reference to A&E on a Saturday night. It's what we do and do not believe is a bit weird. Are you religious? Answer, atheist, 21%, not religious, 46%, which is a total of 67% of us not religious. Overwhelming majority, 67%. Only 33% of us say we are religious. So this Conservative conference, I don't know which world they're inhabiting, but it's not the one that we're in. Question, do you believe in God? 49% said yes. More than half don't believe in God. Do you believe in life after death? 46% said yes. Do you believe in heaven? 40% said yes. Do you believe in hell? Only 27%. Well, if you believe in heaven, you've got to believe in hell, don't you? But maybe if they think, well, if I don't believe in it, I ain't going there. I mean, where do these people think they're going to go in to live in the afterlife if they don't believe in hell? Centre Parks? Where's it going to be? But anyway, excellent news. We don't believe in the invisible space wizard anymore. The National Conservatism Conference has provided a full pharmacopoeia of the British right-wing culture war. No idea is too lunatic, no notion too fanciful to exclude it from proceedings. In a wild few days, speaker after speaker competed to produce some of the most deranged and objectionable propositions available to modern political thought. Political author Douglas Murray told delegates, quotes, I see no reason why every other country in the world should be prevented from feeling pride in itself because the Germans mucked up twice in a century.
What?
Mucked up. Tory MP Danny Kruger came next. The reporting of his speech centred primarily on the point where he seemed to go quite completely insane, raving about a weird medley of transgressive ideas that is now threatening the basis of civilization. These included Marxism and narcissism and paganism, self-worship and nature worship, all wrapped up in revolution. Anybody know what that means?
No.
Braverman's speech was largely a standard nativist address attacking immigration, multiculturalism and benefits. You know, the usual.
Boring!
The most dangerous speaker by far was one who had the least objectionable thing to say. Michael Gove. His primary function was to legitimise what was said on stage. In doing so, he covered what had been said in a cloak of respectability.
Major capital letters, big news story.
Yeah, it was. In doing so, he covered what had been said in a cloak of respectability. It wasn't some mad frenzy of far-right gibberish. It had been enfolded into the acceptable political boundaries of the Conservative Party. You know, the one that's run by Mr. Integrity. Stanwell. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, no, I was just ringing up. But, you know, Keir Starmer was the head of the CPS, and it just irks me somewhat that, you know, what we see going on with protesters being arrested for nothing. And yet we've seen the HSBC account of Michelle Mone and how she took.
What's this got to do with Keir Starmer?
Well, he was the head of the CPS, right? He's the lawman. He should be demanding in the Commons that we need to speed up the process of Michelle Mone because we
speed up the process of Michelle Mone. Right. Well, I don't think this has anything to do with Keir Starmer. that you could say that this incident or case or however you want to describe it has got is Keir Starmer's fault is stretching it a bit there, Michael. Do me a favour. Good grief. The Conservative Party have been in power for over 13 years and everything is still Labour's fault. No! When will they ever take responsibility for anything that they have done? Is it never? Blackmore. Julian.
Hi, Nick. Can I give you a scenario?
A scenario?
Yeah, well, Boris Johnson is married with children. Okay? He has a 17-year-old friend who he gets a job in the civil service, and when she's 18, he begins having an affair with her. Do you not think that would be big news?
Do I think that it would be an impediment to him becoming the Prime Minister of this country? No, because we know he's a serial finagler.
Oh, so he gets a free pass then?
Well, apparently, as does the King, as does Donald Trump, as does Hillary's ex, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. I've got a picture of him, but what's his name? Oh, that's embarrassing. Hillary's ex. No, her current.
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton is the right answer.
Correct.
Yeah, Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bill. And pretty much every other powerful man that you have ever heard of. Affairs is what they do. I mean, if we were to fire absolutely every bloke or woman who had an affair while also being married to somebody else, then there wouldn't be very many people that are still employed over the age of, let's say, 30 years old.
Okay, so it's not an abuse of power.
It depends on whether it was or not. I mean, if they were both willing, then how is that an abuse of power?
It could be coercive, couldn't it? I mean,
could be, but there's no indication that it was. I mean, you're just making up stories now, Julian. You're just adding to this. It seems to me, if we've been told everything, it just seems like a giant pile of nonsense to me. And people are talking about the people who run ITV, that they are about to get fired. I mean, why? And what is his work colleagues? And they're saying, well, I asked him whether he had an affair, and he said no. Well, of course he did. It's an affair. Of course he said no. What's it got to do with them? He worked with her. He wasn't married to Holly, what's her name? Mystifying. Don't get it. Anyway, thanks a lot, Julian. Good effort. No sale. Inverness. Hello, Archie.
Thanks for having me on the show, Nick. I appreciate it. I wouldn't worry you and Julie about the chat GPT box taking over radio stations, because there's no way a robot could do the Nick Abbot show, no chance.
Right. Well, you don't know that I'm not a robot right now.
Affirmative. The reason I phoned tonight is because this is your Friday night guaranteed a laugh show, and I'm in a state of residual disappointment. So I'm looking to be cheered up. I was hoping to talk about political disengagement. Political disengagement? Yeah. I don't want to talk about it with you, Nick, because you knocked me over the top rope lower go as soon as for round one rang. But
what? That was a collection of syllables signifying nothing, but go ahead.
Okay, but last night Alistair Campbell was on. Did you hear it at all?
He was on what? No, I didn't.
Ian Dale.
Oh, right.
He had an hour on with Ian Dale, and he was speaking about his new book. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been Have You Got a Brain or Are You a Brexiteer? I'm not sure. Might have to fact check that one. But as soon as I heard that Alistair Campbell was on last night, I thought, well, I can't talk about political disengagement with Nick because he'll tear me apart. But Alistair Campbell, I'll take on Alistair Campbell, no problem. So all day I've been looking forward to speak to Alistair Campbell, and then as soon as the lines opened, I tried to go on to speak to Alistair Campbell. Cut long story short, I was on the line for ages, and I never got to speak to Alistair Campbell. It cost me over £12 for the phone call, and I never got to speak to Alistair. But that's not a problem because I'm on benefits, saying like I can afford it. But the thing that I found strange was the fact that I was told that I couldn't get through is because there were so many calls to Alistair Campbell.
Yeah.
Well, that may well have been the case, but they certainly didn't go to air. The hour sounded more like a podcast than a phone-in, Nick. So I've got a theory about this. Can I run this past you?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, well,
I'm undecided. Right now I'm thinking... Go ahead.
Well, if I suggest that I was told that there was too many calls for me to be fit.
Maybe they were just being polite, Archie. Maybe they just didn't like the subject of your call.
Well, maybe it is, or there is an alternative theory, Nick.
Go on.
Do you think that Mr. Campbell could have experienced a bowel malfunction? No, not really. That is a bizarre twist right at the end that I did not see coming. No, I don't think that. But thanks for that thought, Archie, which I will try to scrub from my brain at my earliest opportunity. Bromley. Hello, Joe.
Hello, mate. Nick, are you all right?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Well, as indeed are we all. Philip Schofield, what a litany, what an absolute joke, shall we just say?
A joke?
The guy, well, he is, obviously. I mean, the man can't even make up his own mind.
What does that mean? Can't make up his own mind?
Well, to have come out with his wife and his kids and to have said, well, all of a sudden...
Well, I think he has made up his own mind.
All right. But the very fact that it's very, very important, it's front page news.
Oh, God.
How can that work? How can
the reason it works is, Joe, because people keep clicking on it. If you stopped clicking on those stories, it's like David Beckham's kids. How many careers has that kid gone through? It's about 63, and he's only 12. I think he's a photographer / chef at the moment. I have no idea. But the reason that the Mail keeps printing stories about him is because people keep clicking on him. They know when you click, they can see you doing it. Belfast. Hello, Ken.
Hello, Nick. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. No, I'm thinking, yes, I think you're partly right. This does seem every opportunity to beat somebody over the head when they do something wrong. I've no real sympathy for Savannah Braverman in some ways because she didn't come clean in the first place about having, incurred a speeding fine. But the speeding awareness course is not about embarrassing people. It's about an education. It's about...
But it would embarrass her, though, wouldn't it? In her position, it'd be very embarrassing.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And I think, maybe there should be some provision for people in some sort of an authority to have a private course. I would feel the same if it was Keir Starmer. I'd feel the same if it was other members of the government or the opposition, people who hold, important positions. I wouldn't feel bad about them having special provision, to be honest, because at the end of the day, why do we want to embarrass our government? In the front of the world, even if she went online on a course, I mean, obviously it's going to be around the country before the thing will be over. And I just feel sometimes, every little thing we have to beat the life out of it in terms of embarrassing or pulling people apart. Now, it doesn't matter to me what shade of politics is in. I'm in Northern Ireland. We have our own shades to worry about. But in this instance, I mean, she didn't try to defer payment of her fine. She did try to find an alternative way to have this course. And, whenever the civil service said, look, it's not available, she thought probably, okay, well, I won't go on the course because it's too public, so I'll just pay the fine and take the points. And that's probably the quietest way out, really.
Yes, quiet, yes. But is it right, though? Because the problem is, surely, that she's the minister in charge of law and order. Yes.
Is what right?
Is everything that you've just suggested, that, she tried to essentially get around what would be the fate of anybody else that did what she did and was caught speeding.
Yes.
The problem is, as Aubrey suggested when I was just talking to him, that the issue is less about the speeding fine itself and more about the cover-up.
I agree with you at that point, but I think why she covered up, I have no idea. But I don't think she tried to get around it. She just tried to get something a little less public. And, she tried to pay her fine or go on the course. The public facing of the course was not going to work for her. It was never going to work, I think. She probably thought that.
But it appears as though she was. But it appears as though she was trying to get around all of it. She didn't want to pay a fine. She didn't want to get the points, and she didn't want to go on the driving awareness course.
I'm not sure how we conclude that she didn't want to pay the fine or get the awareness. She was trying to look at the option of not getting penalty points. And when you go on the speed awareness course, that you avoid that problem. You don't have to pay the fine. You don't have to have penalty points. You just have to pay for the course. I think if it was me and I was caught speeding, I would be hoping I would be offered a speeding awareness course, because once you put points in your licence, you're open for all kinds of things to do with your insurance. And she's probably... I can't speak for her, but she's probably trying to avoid all that and think, well, the speed awareness course would be the easiest option. On the other hand, it turned out to be not the easiest option because of the fact that it was all going to be very public. And I just wonder, should there be a facility for some people in society to have the ability to take a course in a more private way?
Well, do you think that should apply to famous people, for instance?
Well, I think so, yes. Why not? I mean, it'll cost them more. I mean, I don't know how much the awareness course is, but it'll certainly cost them a lot more to have a private facility. But, if...
Should it be extended to wealthy people?
Not necessarily, no. But people who are in the public profile all the time, who are facing the public with different things, and who have maybe a more public job, possibly. But just because you have money, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you have, if you're in a position where everything you do and say is in the public light, then, you'd probably, I wouldn't want to, I would try to avoid those things, putting myself in the public in that way, embarrassing my family and so on, just because I went a few miles an hour over the speeding limit, And I think there is a case for it. And I don't think it's limited to the Conservative Party. And I don't think she's handled herself well. She should have come clean at the start. I don't blame her for inquiring. I would inquire if it was me. I'd be inquiring. I say, could this not be done quietly? And I'll still pay the fine and I'll still pay what I have to pay. Only I just don't want to appear in front of the world because I've got a speeding ticket.
Yeah, I would expect that if the Labour Party make a big deal about this, then a high-ranking member of the Labour Party will have been found to do the exact same thing. Recent history tells us that is likely.
Well, it's human nature not to embarrass yourself, no matter what party you're in. And if I were in the Labour Party and I was, representing them, and I would be saying to people higher up in the Labour Party, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because someday this could be you.
Right.
In front of the speed awareness course, and your name could be out there. And if it is someone like Keir Starmer who's online to be our next Prime Minister, he's not going to like it.
No, quite. Thanks, Ken. Gilesgate, Aidan.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Glad to hear us.
What would you like to say?
I would like to say, my granddad told me at a very young age, charity begins at home, right? We're putting so much attention on things like the European Union, we're not paying attention to the problems that are at home. We have a lot of crises, like we need more houses. We need about, I think, 600,000 more houses at least. The NHS are getting underpaid. People like Michael Gove, they're just absolutely not doing anything. It's a propaganda machine. Like I say, we separate from that, and we're going to live in the trees, in the caves, in the...
Okay, all right. I knew something was coming. Thanks a lot, mate. Chelsea, hello, Mark.
Oh, hi there, hello.
Mark.
No, I cross swords with you on this one, I'm afraid. I don't think it's because he's homosexual. I don't think it would make any difference if he was hetero or bi. I think the fact that he's filthy rich as a result of doing something which is very, very prevalent. I'm not talking about the bedroom, but the living room. And by the way, don't say front room. Well, you said front room. I say drawing room because it's a bit, it's a bit... Anyway,
Mark, you could say drawing room if we were having a phone conversation in the 1950s. These days, it's a front room. Yeah.
Okay, living room then. Don't say front room.
The salon.
So
Let's talk about it's the salon.
About the stuff you read in the Times and the Sun, which come off the same press.
Right.
And he's not, exactly like Attenborough or something. He's not even talking about it. So he's got filthy rich from doing what seems to me to be next to nothing.
Right.
Hid his sexuality, I'm sure, but there is this English sexual repression. Now, your man who took the call from me hadn't heard of Field Marshal Montgomery, but he had heard of World War II. You know who I'm talking about, do you?
What, the bloke through the glass here?
Field Marshal Montgomery, have you heard of him?
Yeah, of course I've heard of him.
Yeah, but he hadn't. The controller, the producer, the governor who took my call.
Yeah,
he hadn't even heard of him.
I seriously doubt that.
What do you think he devoted the rest of his retired life to after defeating Hitler in World War II?
Monty?
In Civvy Street.
I don't know. Wearing extravagant hats, jodhpurs, that sort of thing?
Prosecuting, finding down, tracking, having imprisoned. It was sodomy. Men who were guilty of, being gay.
Well, that's a bizarre thing for a person like that to be doing.
There's a repression, whether it's... But with heterosexuality...
Wait a minute. Hey, Mark, what has this got to do with Monty? I mean, you're talking about the drawing room. You're talking about Montgomery as though you're discussing current affairs. What are you talking about?
You've got security staff outside expensive flats who refer to playboys as nonces because they're visited by ladies.
Oh, Mark, you are all over the place. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, but I do know that most of it is borderline offensive. The drawing room. One only talks of the drawing room these days. It's very non-you to say front room. Dreadfully common. Fishy Sunak has insisted that Brexit is working by citing cheaper beer. He may have been drinking too much of it. Booze. He claimed the economy was looking up. And people's household incomes were hugely outperforming expectations. I mean, he must be drunk off his face. Hold tight, Fishy, you might be falling over.
I'm gripping it.
He's gripping it. Despite consumers struggling with high inflation and the cost of living crisis, the Prime Minister claimed that there were lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy. What's he talking about? Fishy Sunak rejected Uncle Nigel's claims that Brexit had failed.
I'm a nutcase.
And he droned on about free ports and cutting VAT on sanitary products and reforming beer duty as major successes of Brexit. OK, Shall we take them in order? Free ports. Free ports are something we could have had and actually did have when we were in the European Union. And the way they appear to be planned here are just gifting corporations vast tracts of land in which they can do whatever they want with no rules. And if you like the idea of that, then you must be the CEO of a multinational corporation, or you're the friend of a Tory minister who's doling out the land, because these will be places where you will have to rely on the kindness of corporations. And corporations are as moral and kindly as your average shark. Fishy Sunak said, economic optimism is increasing. Consumer confidence is increasing. Growth estimates are being raised, he said to reporters on the way to the G7 summit. He said official figures for real household disposable income growth were now hugely better than predicted. Can you feel it?
No.
Of course not. Does anyone know what this man is actually talking about? He's just filling the air with noise and numbers like you-know-who.
And 1, 2,
3,
11.
No. I mean, I know that we got used to Bodger lying about everything all the time, but the Tories seem to have found someone who is equally allergic to the truth while being totally isolated from reality. What a combination. Now, the Resolution Foundation is an organisation that actually works to improve the living standards of the poor, as opposed to distracting them with talk of being invaded and gaslighting them that they're doing well when in fact they aren't. And the Resolution Foundation said that typical household disposable incomes were on course to be lower by the end of 2027 than they were during the COVID pandemic. And last month, the Bank of England's chief economist said that people needed to accept that they were poorer. And Fishy wants those who are poorer to believe they're richer. Like he's doing the old Jedi mind trick. These are not the drones you're looking for. Trouble is, Fishy Sunak's not a Jedi. He's more of a Sith Lord. And Sunak acknowledged that things felt tough for families. Like he's got any idea what he's talking about. How would he know? He highlighted the government's contribution to energy bills, which wasn't, of course. They didn't help us with our energy bills. He was helping the energy giants to charge us whatever they want, and then the government would guarantee that they get it. He also defended the economic benefits of Brexit in the face of criticism that it's held back the economy and not brought promised prosperity. He said, I introduced free ports, a Brexit benefit around the country, attracting jobs and investment to lots of different places, which is incorrect. Like I said, we had them already when we were in the EU. He didn't introduce them. And he said, we cut VAT on sanitary products. And we reformed the alcohol duties that mean by this summer you'll be able to get cheaper beer in pubs. These are all very tangible benefits of Brexit that I've already delivered, which is totally not true. Beer is not cheap by any standard, and the beer manufacturers themselves said that the tax cut on some beer was something we could have done while we were in the EU. And the tax cut on sanitary products was something we could have done while we were in the EU. So everything he said was total misinformation. Liar! When will these people stop? You literally can't trust a single word that comes out of that man's mouth. But what a mouth. His lips are so moist, the hair oiled just so, and look at his little suits. Isn't he an absolute dream? He said that beer was going to be cheaper because he delivered it. He personally, Fishy Sunak, has delivered us cheaper beer because of Brexit. It's another Brexit success. That's what he said, out loud. This wasn't even a sort of twisted, demented thought he had in a semi-conscious state. He actually said it out loud to journalists, boasting that he, Fishy Sunak, has reduced the price of beer, and he could only do that because of Brexit. And the beer companies said, oh, no, it isn't. In response to Sunak's claims that Brexit had assisted in keeping beer cheap for the nation. Cheap? I mean, has he ever been in a pub? I'm guessing not, except possibly for a press photo shoot. where he pretended to know what a beer pump was. I mean, the man doesn't even know what a credit card is, for crying out loud. In response to Sunak's claims that Brexit has assisted in keeping beer cheap for the nation, says the inside organ for the drinks business, thedrinksbusiness.com, brewers, it says, highlighted how the myriad challenges the sector is juggling make his self-congratulatory point too simplistic to give context to the real issues affecting the cost of beer. Adnam's production director, Fergus Fitzgerald, said, in truth, it's not Brexit that saved the day, because the only significant reduction in alcohol duty is on 3.4% strength beer, which could have been done while we were in the EU. He said, even here, it will have no impact at the bar because it's dwarfed by all the other costs that pubs and breweries have taken. Thornbridge Brewery Chief Operating Officer Simon Walden said that Sunak was simply quoting the beer duty reforms, and so this was cherry-picking just one of the component parts of the cost of producing and selling beer, and that only applies to draft beer, and said that any discount in the draft rate just offsets the inflationary increase in the base duty rate of just over 10%. OK, so that's the technical part. And here they get to the emotion. So we got two leaders of two giant brewery companies, and they said that Sunak's claims that owing to Brexit this summer you'll be able to get cheaper beer in pubs was based on ignorance or a deliberate attempt to pretend, as in... Liar! And they said either it's amazing ignorance of what's happened during the past year in hospitality or a deliberate attempt to pretend that standing in the sea with an umbrella over your head means that your feet won't get wet. Calling it out. One of them said that the spin being put on facts, in inverted commas, facts that the government is peddling on beer, has led him to question the validity of its other statements being circulated on other topics. He said it's infuriating to see the facts being distorted so heavily when we know the real impacts, we brewers. And when I see it happening on topics I know something about, he said, it leads me to assume that the same is true in areas where I am less familiar. Yeah, lying their faces off every time they open their mouths. Zero integrity.
This government will have integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level. Liar!
Yeah, at no level. No integrity, no professionalism. And what was the other one? I don't know. But it's his number one priority.
It's the country's number one priority. It's my number one priority up and down the country, and that will be our focus.
He's gripping it. Let's talk about this with Stephen Wolfe. Stephen is director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Hello, Stephen.
Hello there, how are you?
Good, thanks. This suggestion from Keir Starmer, it's about time somebody said something sensible about Brexit, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say it's sensible about Brexit. I think what Keir Starmer is attempting to do is try and balance those within his party who support Remain, whilst those within the party who also accept that Brexit happened, there was a vote for it, and they don't want to upset the electorate in the north of England or the eastern coasts or some parts of the south that voted. So he's trying to find a way in which he can try and bring two parts and two wings of his party together. But actually what he is doing is simply sending out a very clear message to the rest of the country that he intends, with the Labour Party, to return to the European Union in full within his government.
Well, that's the opposite of what he said. He said he has no intention of rejoining the European Union or the single market. I can't recall how many times he said that. He's very, very specific about that.
Yes, but he's been very specific about a number of things within his party. He was very specific initially about how he was going to deal with those within his party who he thought disagreed with his view, particularly the previous leader, and then he took a different view. He's flip-flopped so many times, as the Conservative Party have pointed out, and others within his own party have done so. So the question is whether you actually generally believe somebody who says one thing and does the opposite. And he's done that many, many times. The real fundamental question here is, it's not just Keir Starmer. The direction of travel over the past year and a half in particular the way that the Prime Minister had an agreement with the European Union over Northern Ireland that is certainly more beneficial to the European Union than Northern Ireland. The way that the agreements over fisheries have actually been reduced in many ways to those who supported Brexit and wanted fisheries happening. There is those agreements now between the financial services that seem to go over to the European Union now and say we want to try and work with your rules. So none of that is actually saying that we want true Brexit. What it is bringing more alignment to the European Union and creating the framework where if you do decide that you want to go into the European Union via another referendum, it can be done very easily.
Are you the kind of person that thinks that Brexit hasn't worked because we haven't had a pure enough version of it?
No, I think in many ways Brexit was always going to be difficult at the beginning because there would have been some difficulties, as we saw, with the European Union and its stance over the agreements. But where I take the view is I just don't think two things have really happened. One is that the government was strong enough to deal with a very recalcitrant civil servants and certain parts of the corporate world that were really determined not to go along with the agreements. That could have happened. And secondly, there was also not enough speed in being able to do one of the most important things that people like myself would bring benefits to Britain, which is a disalignment from EU regulations. And what we do know, looking at what's happened recently, where they decided that they're not going to remove lots of EU regulations and EU laws, that is another key point where you just can't have a true Brexit without it, because even though we've left the European Parliament, even though technically we're not spending the money there, we're still very much aligned with the European Union in regulations, laws, and there's only a few areas where we're not involved. So
but isn't that the only sensible way to run a country, though? I mean, if you're going to try to trade with your biggest trading partner, then you have to align your rules by either being at the table to make those rules in the first place, or now, as we've decided we don't want to do that, then we have to align ourselves with the bigger partner.
Well, that's not necessarily the case with our biggest partner, the US, is it? We don't align with them completely.
The US is not our biggest trading partner, the European Union is.
Well, it depends on whether you're looking in services or manufacturing, whether you're looking in financial services,
as far as
by segmentation.
As far as the value of the trade is concerned, there's no doubt about it that the European Union is our biggest trading partner.
But your argument is that if you have a trading partner that is big, then we have to align ourselves with everybody else.
Well, no,
not with everybody else.
You have to come to an agreement with that partner for whatever the regulations are that govern the good that is being traded.
But here is the point. The point is that once we left the European Union, we had supposedly the opportunity to do certain agreements with them. And that's what we did. And certainly Boris would laud himself as saying, I've managed to make a better agreement than that of Theresa May. The question whether that agreement was actually working, and I would say it didn't because of the Northern Ireland situation, what we happened in fisheries and what we happened in financial services. We're now got a situation where, in terms of financial services, the Bank of England, the Financial Conduct Authority, are trying to change regulations now at this stage to make themselves more competitive, rather than doing it at the beginning when those of us who were supporting that particular point, and I came from financial services, I came from the hedge fund industry, which was very supportive, as were a lot of entrepreneurial types within the City of London supported of Brexit, whereas those who were like the large corporates, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, they were supportive of the EU, where they had a lot more influence than the smaller businesses. And that's only happening now, but that was a failure of this government to be able to act on what was the positive elements. Now, we have had some positives with the trade agreements elsewhere, but my argument to that is that many of those...
They aren't net positive, though, are they? Even with all of the trading agreements that have been agreed so far, it doesn't come up to a fraction of the amount of trade that we have and money that we have lost by leaving the European Union.
Well, there's arguable elements of whether we've lost in terms of the European Union over a period of time. I still see similar types of arguments as were put forward in the first debates when we were there. But there have certainly been losses. I will concede that. But there have been gains in other areas too.
Like where?
And well, you could look at the fact that in terms of vaccines, we always point to that as one particular point.
You can't possibly be running that line. The vaccine rollout was only possible because we left the European Union. That's been debunked so many times. It's incredible that people are still saying that out loud.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, that's also been proven in other ways. I mean, you can. This is
well,
the
like
point
what? When Rishi Sunak was asked just the other day, what are the benefits of Brexit? He sort of stared into space, and all he could come up with was cheaper beer and sanitary products. Neither of which is true, because both of the things that he cut on the price of those could have been done within the European Union. When people such as yourself try to come up with benefits of Brexit, you just can't do it.
Well, as I said to you at the beginning, there were certain things that we were looking for that would have given us benefits in Brexit. I mean,
right. So
the government will try and argue that we have had a benefit in fisheries because we've got an extra £25 million over the course of years, and I would have argued that
fishing industry would disagree. It's on its uppers, and it's completely insignificant as far as the rest of the economy is concerned. I mean, it's significant for the fisher persons themselves, but not for the rest of us.
No, the point about it is when we were looking at the figures and looking at the arguments for fisheries, if there was an extensive agreement which would have brought more of the fishing back, there would have been the free ports. That is one of the very good positives that are coming out of these free ports. We had free ports when we were in the European Union. You see, this is what I'm saying, is when people such as yourself are asked for the benefits of Brexit, you keep saying things that aren't true. You had the benefits of free ports, but once certain EU regulations and rules came through, you then had to remove them. And that is one of the elements. Free ports exist within the European Union, but only within certain exceptions that you had to argue for. And this is where you can try and pick and point. I actually spent 5 years in there. You could see where it was going in terms of the regulatory control that was coming over. We saw it when he talked about things like the Alternative Investment Fund Management Directive, which decimated parts of the hedge fund industry, which we know has reduced dramatically since then, for example. And these are very clear elements that happened. There are always going to be positive and negative. In terms of fisheries, we were very clear that there were some great opportunities, but this government missed it, and the government just failed to do so. Well, the problem with British fishing is that the fish that swim around these parts are not to our taste, so we have to sell them, and the biggest market for the fish and bivalves that exist around our shores is France. Well, one of the biggest things I looked at, which I always find shocking, is they're saying that we don't have a taste for oysters, we don't have a taste for mussels, we don't have a taste for shellfish, which we all give out to France. But when we come down here into the shops, they're incredibly expensive, and more expensive than they are in France, which I always thought was incredibly strange. Why is it more expensive to have something produced here in our own country than it is in another? What difference does it make if we don't want to eat them? Well, there's loads of people who eat them. The market in the shellfish sector is rising in the UK ever since we've come from Brexit. Now, I can't argue whether that's a consequence of Brexit or otherwise, or whether it's other market considerations. I've not been able to look into that and analyse it in the same way. But what we do see is that there is a market here. It's just how do we deal with it? We've had the powers of the supermarkets, which are much more powerful here in the UK than they are in the rest of Europe. So there are things that we should have changed. For the benefit of the consumer. I mean, we have some of the cheapest food in the world in this country. We do have some of the cheapest food. Specifically because of the actions of the supermarkets. But we also have less of the things that people are saying, oh, look, when I go abroad, you've got these wonderful markets in France and Spain. You don't get it here in the same way. Well, that's consumer choice. Consumers have turned their backs on small shops, and they like to do the weekly shop in Tesco's. Other supermarkets are available. Or is it because of the powers of monopolies, duopolies, or the influence that they have in government? Now, we can enter into the arguments of whether corporates have greater power and influence that enables them to give certain elements of strength over that of the smaller entities, or whether it's the landlords who own the big properties that they are in, or whether there are benefits for the supermarkets that they got under Thatcher's period. It's always malevolent outside forces. I mean, I'll give you just finally, as we're talking about food, Jacob Rees-Mogg said the price of food will go down. Daniel Hannan says we can show with quantifiable empirical data how food bills and fuel bills and taxes will all be lower.
Douglas Carswell said, our food bills will be lower, our energy costs will be lower, our tax bills will be lower. 3 of the guiding lights of the Brexit campaign, and there's absolutely not a single solitary syllable of truth in anything that they promised.
Well, I would argue that there was a potential for that, and I certainly saw that when I was looking at the research.
Well, I'm going to have to end it there, Stephen. On a positive note, the potential is there. It's good to know. Thank you for that, Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Gateshead, Fevos.
Hello, hi there.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Great show. I understand why it's not in the daytime, though. It's a bit too crazy for daytime.
A little bit, a little bit too for daytime.
Anyway, well, I called to talk about the EHRC. I assume you know what that is.
Yes.
It's
European Court of Human Rights. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Human rights. And apparently in charge of it is a baroness, which that is interesting.
She's in charge of it?
Yeah. Okay. She's the head of EHRC.
Right.
Of equalities, a baroness. Anyway, so apparently she made a few statements and made a few decisions that pointed towards the direction that she actually hates trans people and views them as a danger to society.
I'm not sure that that's true. What did she specifically say?
Well, it is a very long topic we could talk about for hours.
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't really want to talk about it for a single solitary second. I was not on that subject. I didn't mention that subject. Those syllables never dropped from my lips. Why do you think that you can call in and just yank this show in the direction that you want it to go? Not now, not ever, never. And furthermore...
No.
Oldbury. Hello, Ranjit.
Hello, Nick. You're all right, buddy?
Yes, good, thanks. Have you been frying tonight?
I have indeed. Yes. It was going quite well, to be honest, today for a change. But we had this massive rain shower, heavy, very heavy. Then that stopped for about another half an hour. We had some more, and then that kind of put a dampener on it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, but
people took a peek outside and thought, what's in the fridge? Yeah.
Nothing's in the fridge, mate. Might be Boris in there. You might have Boris hiding in your fridge.
Permanently hiding, yeah.
Yeah. Where
haven't seen him in a good long while.
No. Now, you know, every week, right, it just gets worse, doesn't it, of what the Tories come out with, yeah? You know, that, what's the name now, that woman that used to be Home Secretary talking about the cheese. Yeah, and you know, Anne Widdecombe. Yeah,
Anne Widdecombe. Yeah,
that
woman.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you know, you was Home Secretary for a while. You must have some form of intelligence. Yeah. That Kofi, Theresa Kofi woman. Well, she's had too many pies to eat. Right.
Well, that's neither here nor there. What's that got to do with anything?
Well, if she hadn't eaten all the pies, then, you know, we probably would have had some left for ourselves.
Do you sell pies in your shop?
Yeah, we do sell pies,
Now, what's in them? Don't tell me. Mystery meat.
Look, listen, right. So, the thing is, and then that one bloke goes, well, you know, there's other forms of beans, isn't there? You know, you can have the value beans, right? So when your government, the people who are supposed to be taking care of you, are doing this stuff and saying that stuff out in the public, when is the public going to realise that it's going all pear-shaped?
I think the public have realised that in large numbers, which is why their protestations are becoming ever louder and more unhinged. They're desperately scrabbling to keep on side the knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing fraternity, admitting really that they've lost everybody else, and so they're just going after the "we're being invaded" crowd.
Well, no, that's kind of one thing as well now. Right, and then you got Farage, right, saying Brexit hasn't worked, right?
Yeah, failed, I think, is the
failed.
Failed.
He's blaming everybody else.
Yeah, failed. It has. Hey, Nigel.
Whinging and whining and moaning.
Yeah, a little bit of moaning. Yeah.
And he said he was going to leave this country if it failed, or whatever it would. Yeah. So why hasn't he gone off?
I don't know. Let's buy him a one-way ticket. He can report back to us from Rwanda. See what that's like.
I was going to say put him in Rwanda. Okay. right? And then now, Rishi Sunak, you know the phrase, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So he probably was trying to be the honest broker in this now, and he's decided, you know...
Rishi Sunak and honest in the same sentence is not a good fit.
No, it's not. No, but he's joined them now. He's become a clone of Boris Johnson.
Oh, he's gone to the dark side. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, look what the water companies, yeah.
Wow, you are all over the shop, Ranjit. You've done everything from pies to water. Go ahead.
The ruling parties, yeah, are absolutely poo-pooing on us, all right? And when Rishi Sunak says our economy is looking up, it is looking up. It's looking up at where everybody else is going while we're still at the bottom.
Wow, that was that's borderline listener with material territory there, Ranjit. But good effort. Thanks for that. How's Brexit going, Nige?
Brexit's going great.
East Grinstead. Robert.
Hello. Hi, good evening.
Robert.
Hello. I mean, it could be just a little bit of a sort of a protest vote or a protest opinion. I think a lot of people it dominated the headlines, this subject, between 2016 to 2019. You had a very, you had sort of a very seized up Parliament by it, if you know what I mean.
It was the only topic of conversation, pretty much, for years and years.
Well, I got it, and I think a few things would have slid. I mean, just to say, I didn't think we had a very free press around March 2020. Now, we've done that, we've been there, we've done it, we came out of lockdown ages ago. But I certainly, I can't say that we don't have a free press now, but I do think that there, to reiterate what the last caller was saying a little bit more, no offence to him clearly, I think there are other issues. I think that...
there are other issues that are ailing the country, no doubt about it, but most of them would be solved to some extent if we put fewer barriers up to trading with our biggest trading partner. I mean, that just makes sense, doesn't it? Even I can understand that. Colchester. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nick. All right?
Yes, good, thanks.
Yeah, no, I always thank you for questioning the lockdowns as well, because I think you were proven right about that. But
about what?
About being sceptical about the lockdowns.
Was I?
Yeah, you was.
Now, what do you mean by sceptical?
You change your mind.
Well, I change my mind about everything on a daily basis, depending on which way the wind is blowing. What do you mean sceptical about lockdowns?
Well, you were kind of supporting the Sweden approach.
Right, yes. All Swedish people, always so perfect.
No, but you ask questions, and I appreciate that. So that's what a journalist is meant to do.
Right. Well, I'm not a journalist, but I might ask questions, but only because I don't actually have the answers. If I had the answers, then I wouldn't ask the questions.
Well, that's what a journalist is meant to do.
He's meant to
and
do,
you did the right thing.
Right. I'm a hard-working person doing the right thing, yes.
Yeah, I'm always grateful. But,
all right, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think this focus over Boris Johnson, and what I said to the researcher is like, we're on the verge of World War III with Russia, basically.
Are we? That's alarming.
Yeah, pretty much. And and we're focusing about Boris Johnson still. It's kind of, that guy's out of office.
Yeah. If we were on the verge of World War III with Russia, we are actually in World War III with Russia right now. I mean, what's the difference between what we're doing right now and actually being at war? Not much.
Exactly. That's my point. Because Joe Biden said a year ago that if we give weapons to Ukraine, then we're in World War III.
They'll use them.
Yeah, that's my point.
That's my point.
Yeah, well, we're not in disagreeing, so it's like...
I disagree. Yeah, I don't think we're in World War III. I mean, you're talking about these stories now that says, well, Vladimir Putin is still going to nuke you.
No, not at all.
Okay.
But you have to put yourself in the position of the Russians. That's what Kennedy did in 1963. and it's been a good. But we have so many crazy people now in
office.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
I know, it's painful.
So that's what I'm worried about. And people talk about climate change. Well, my main concern is nuclear war, and I think more people should be concerned about that.
Well, that would change the climate.
It definitely would.
Yeah.
And I just think there's not enough people worried about it, because...
Well, what would be the point of being worried about it? I mean, it's going to happen one way or the other. If rootin', tootin', shootin' Putin feels backed into a corner and he's going to set off some nukes, because that will show us, then being worried about it ain't not going to protect you from the radiation.
I don't think it's going to be Putin. I'm more worried about the people in Washington that are talking about tactical nuclear strikes. I mean...
Nobody in Washington is suggesting that the West engage in tactical nuclear strikes. No one at all.
Yes, they are.
Who? Name the person.
All the neocons, like in the US. Every neocon in the US is saying they want to take out Russia.
A neocon? I don't think that's entirely correct. No, I don't think neocons, but like who? Who, for instance? Like, are you talking about the Bushes?
Absolutely.
Those people?
No.
It's not Hillary's fault, is it?
No, it's not Hillary's fault either. I'm not a Trump fan or anything. It's like, but, it's the same neocons that, if you listen to Douglas McGregor, it's the same neocons that were in charge during the Bush administration that are in charge now.
Let me assure you, Chris, nobody in America is going to drop a nuclear bomb on Russia. It's not going to happen. Not now, not ever, never. Happy?
No.
I didn't think you would be, no.
If you look at the coup in 2014, where we installed...
Coup?
Yeah, it was a coup.
What coup? Where are we talking about now?
In Ukraine in 2014.
Oh, God. Are you actually one of these people that is sticking up for Russia now? Like it's the evil West who's been encroaching on their territory, so those Ukrainians deserve everything they get.
No, I did.
That's not you at all. That's somebody else I was thinking of, right. Anyway, where's it, apart from a general fear about World War III, which is understandable, but not something you want to dwell on all day long, what else have you got, Chris?
No, I just called in to thank you for being a journalist during lockdown.
Right, well, I'm not a journalist, but I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chelsea, hello, Mark.
Oh, hi, hello. So down the road, the Citizens Advice Bureau is shutting. The mental health unit of the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital shut. So if someone's sectioned and you want to visit them, you've got to go to Park Royal or miles away. As you know, I'm sorry I'm boring. Chelsea Cop Shop, Belgravia Cop Shop, shut. Chelsea's being demolished, sold to the Qatari royal family to be luxury flats. If your watch is slightly shiny, you can watch on YouTube people are beaten to death. Sometimes the watch is worth nothing. We need cops when the crime rate is the highest ever, and cop shops. Now, all of this, and I could go on and on, I know you haven't got time.
You have.
Infrastructure that's destroyed is because of people in small boats coming here.
Yes.
Not because of mismanagement or corruption,
no,
or hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money given by the Prime Minister
just
and his
vanished.
number two.
Yeah, vanished.
They've got a name for it. It's called fast tracking. You give the money to your mates, but which would be okay if the stuff worked, but straight out of the Del Boy School of Business, it was for reject substandard PPE equipment that cost under 100,000 deaths. No talk of corporate manslaughter.
The best investment you could possibly make is to be a donor to the Conservative Party.
But they've discovered legal migration now, as opposed to people in small boats that legally claim asylum. Now, even Hitler didn't object to a foreign student coming and going to university. I know somebody who's dead, someone who's dead now. She dined with Hitler. She went to Germany to university and represented a country in the javelin, the Berlin Olympics. Even Hitler didn't object to someone with money coming and going to the university because they weren't Aryan. Now this,
I'm not sure that anybody in the government refuses to contemplate the notion of somebody coming here to study. They don't like it when they bring their family members with them. But, yeah, okay, all right. I feel your emotion, Mark, but I bet that's about as far as I can go with the Hitler talk. I think we mentioned Hitler a couple of times on this show, but I think we got away with it. Just don't mention the war, that's all. Covent Garden, hello, Alicia.
Oh, hi. Oh, my God, I've been waiting for ages.
I know. Haven't you been waiting a long time? Sorry about that, Alicia.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously you and other people are saying the whole Philip Schofield thing ain't serious.
No.
It is quite serious, because
Well, for
imagine
him.
all the kids that studied media and stuff, because I did media in college, and some kids have to write about their best presenter, and imagine they picked him. And then on top of that, all the adverts he gets, it means he's trustworthy and just everything. It is a big deal.
No, everything that you just said implies that it's not a big deal. I mean, okay, adverts, that's one thing. If people want you to advertise their product, then you have to be scandal.
Yeah,
you've got to be scandal-free. As for media students writing essays about their favourite presenter, what's that got to do with anything?
They're going to be devastated. Like, fans will be devastated. Like,
fans? The average audience for that show must be 70 years old. What are you talking about?
Young. When you're a student, you have days off. Like, obviously, when I was a student, I had days off, and you watch it on your days off. Or if
days
you're ill,
off?
whatever.
Get on with your work.
No, but it is quite serious.
It's not
if you're
serious.
deep, because you don't think deep, isn't it? Like, everyone's different, isn't it? His character wasn't Jack the Lad or like Phil or Mitchell or something. His character was like a clean, do you know what I mean? Character.
Alicia,
But you're not,
who did you vote for in the last general election?
Why?
I think we just heard all we need to know. Guilty. His character. He's doing a show for pensioners. What difference does it make? All he's got to be is smiley. I mean, they just do smiling for a living. Hampshire, Tom.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes, Nick. Please, can you get off your soapbox for 5 minutes and let somebody else talk? I've got the fix on the water companies. First of all, we have a law called the Consumer Rights Law in England, right? The next thing is, if you meet Dick Turpin with a gun in his hand and say, hand over, you don't have to pay him. So my question is, with the water companies, they can ask what they like, but it's only the idiots that pay the bill. If all the country refuse to pay the water rate, then it's not the company, it's not the people's problem, it's the company's problem.
Right, okay, you go first.
Right, the next thing is about nationalisation. The water companies were not nationalised, don't forget. They were stolen off the customers from the start.
No, they weren't stolen. They were sold. Given, essentially.
They were stolen, Nick, they were stolen from the company.
They weren't stolen, Tom. They were given away, essentially, or sold, more accurately.
Yeah, I have got a fix for taking them back.
Wow, you're just full of fixes, you.
No, the public can take the water companies back.
Oh, yeah. Go on, then.
Yeah, for the simple reason is, at nationalisation, the government stipulated that the public would not be responsible for assets. In other words, the company, what you're arguing with now is that the company should pay for the assets, right? Which means that...
No, not pay for the assets. What do you mean, pay for the assets?
They pay for the, assets are improvements, investments.
Right, that's not assets, that's improvements. But go on.
Yeah, well,
improvements to the assets.
Yeah, well, the improvements show as an asset on the finance returns.
Oh.
So my question
expert.
Yeah, my question is, what should happen is that since the privatisation, when we are not responsible for investment, the investment should come from the company. At the time, there was a valuation of the company at the time of privatisation, right?
You know what was? You know when the show was better, Tom?
What?
When it was just me on my soapbox, instead of you dragging us down with all of this nonsense. You refuse to pay your bill first. Go ahead and then call me back next week and see what happens. All right. Thanks a lot, mate. Well, you know, when you start with an attack, don't expect to stick around a long time. He was on way longer than he should have been. That's because I'm a kind and generous person. So, this thing with Boris Johnson's absolutely comical. Shame he's not here to see it, isn't it? He's busy working for his constituents in, let's see here, Las Vegas. Boris Johnson's allies up the ante, says Steve Swinford out of The Times. Boris Johnson's allies up the ante and warn that they will obstruct Fishy Sunak's government unless he intervenes to stop what they see as a witch hunt. They say it's the final straw for Johnson and warn that MPs and members supportive of the former PM will begin organising. Yeah, fix bayonets, Corporal Jones. A Boris ally said, Boris has been supportive of the government, but this act is the final straw. There are a growing number of MPs who want party leadership to act to stop these witch hunts, and a group of MPs will meet to consider options. And then they'll have a nap and forget what it was that they agreed. Meanwhile, members across the country are being organised, they said. Yeah, you could organise them by face colour. Red, redder, very red indeed. Boris Johnson's allies claimed that the decision to refer him to the police was signed off by senior ministers. They said ministers had direct knowledge of what was happening. This is denied by Cabinet Office and the government. They said, "Oh, weren't us, we don't do nothing." What happened to, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to be afraid of? What happened to that? Or does that only apply to us poor dopes who pay taxes?
The little people.
The little people, not leprechauns. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer said he's had it up to here. He said Boris Johnson has new questions to answer about allegations of lockdown parties at Chequers. Business meetings. This is despite the public being fed up to the back teeth with stories about his law breaking, says Keir Starmer. Fed up we are.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Of him and everything about him. Everything about him. Keir Starmer said there were people who were feeling both hurt and fed up about the continuing saga. We're not just hurt, we're fed up. He said, but there are questions now about how these allegations, why have these allegations not come out before? Yeah, it's part of our new open government that we've heard so much about. Keir Starmer weighed in on the controversy, says The Guardian, after the Cabinet Office published fresh allegations of wrongdoing to the police this week. Now, it seems to me that that's where allegations should go, isn't it? So that they can, have a rummage around and see what's gone on. Isn't that the normal course of events? Not in Toryland, goodness me, no. That's just for the little people. Rules don't apply to them. And they get most irksome when it's suggested that rules should apply to them, don't they? They start flailing around and having a major fit. Starmer weighed in on the controversy after the Cabinet Office passed fresh allegations of wrongdoing to the police. Now, if they hadn't done that, that would in itself be against the law, wouldn't it? So now, am I hallucinating, or do Boris Johnson's allies want people to break the law so that Boris Johnson is not subject to the law? Is that where we are now? And the only reason we know about this is because, of course, Bodger tried to get us, well, he didn't try, he succeeded in getting us poor dopes who pay taxes to pay his blooming legal bills. He's off earning £6 million for doing his stand-up act. Paw! That. Where am I? Paw! You know, that routine. £6 million. How's he worth that, by the way? No stand-up comedian in the world earns that kind of money. How is he worth that? Just curious, aren't you? So he handed his lawyers representing him his diary and other evidence. And the lawyers took a look at it and thought, we better give this to the police. And the reason that they did that is because he isn't paying for the lawyers. We are. Or the cabinet is in our stead. And so the lawyers, seeing evidence of potential wrongdoing, passed it to the authorities, as is the right thing to do. They're hard-working people doing the right thing. Pretty stupid, Bodge, really, to try and get a free legal team. You had us pay for them, which makes us the client. It just came back to bite you, didn't it, nincompoop?
The great big greedy nincompoop.
A great big greedy nincompoop. How can someone who claims to never have done anything wrong be so concerned that the police are looking into his behaviour? I mean, what are they going to find? You said yourself that you haven't done anything wrong.
I followed the ministerial guidance at all times.
No problem then. What's the big concern? Why the flailing and the wailing? I mean, could he be fearful that he has not, in fact, been legal, decent, honest and true? Legal?
No.
Decent? Legal and true?
No, 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 no.
I don't know. Let's look into it and see what we find. I mean, why would anybody object if they've got nothing to hide? Of course, police have fined Johnson already in relation to things that he insists that he didn't do. More than 100 fines were handed out to him and others over events held in and around Downing Street, making it the epicentre of British criminality. Guilty! And this saga, this Partygate saga, contributed to the demise of Johnson's premiership. But he's spent the entire time he's been out complaining and whining, either personally or through his close friends and confidants, that it's the blob that did him down. It's the wokerati, or I don't know, some nonsense that they make up. Just basically anything that Trump said last, ditto. This is what it is.
Whinging and whining and moaning.
Complaining. The diaries showed about a dozen events at the Grace and Favour mansion, Chequers. And Grace and Favour means that we're paying for it. You don't pay for nothing. That's that's in less than a year. A dozen events. Evidence was provided to Johnson's government-appointed lawyers, but the cabinet office, which paid for the lawyers, also received the diaries, and officials then decided that under the Civil Service Code they should refer the matter to the police. It's the legal, decent, honest and true thing to do. And Downing Street denied Johnson was the victim of a politically motivated stitch-up. I refer you back to the comments I made some moments ago about if he hasn't done anything wrong, what's the big to-do? What's with the flailing and the whining? What are they reacting so furiously to? Evidence of potential wrongdoing being given to the police. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Investigations continuing as normal. Is that what they're complaining about? Or is it because they don't get a pass to do whatever they want, whenever they want to do it? What a way to run a country, eh?
Dreadful.
And he's not even here. Can you imagine if he was? He can cause this much kerfuffle from 6,000 miles away. He had to go to Las Vegas, by the way, because in the interests of his constituents in Uxbridge. Uxbridge twinned with Las Vegas. Pretty sure that's right. So this is The Independent, and they're doing a bit on Blobby Johnson. To date, the ex-Prime Minister has earned £4.23 million just through public speaking engagements alone, according to his Register of Interests. £4.23 million. This is on top of the £510,000 he was given as an advance on his memoirs during his time in Downing Street, bringing his total earnings to just shy of £5 million since the leaving office. But we're still paying his blowing legal bills. What a bunch of mugs we are. But the globe trotting comes out because he's in Las Vegas at the moment. You know, he's there acting in the interests of his constituents. And he's been to Texas and here, there and everywhere, baby. But the globe-trotting comes at a cost for his constituents. He's voted a total of 3 times since he was forced to resign as Prime Minister. And one of those was to rebel against Fishy Sunak's new post-Brexit deal for Northern Ireland, the Windsor Framework. During that time, the House of Commons had 190 separate votes. He voted 3 times and 190 different votes. The 187 votes that Mr Johnson has missed include crucial votes on voter ID laws, the National Security Bill, online safety legislation, and the hugely contentious illegal migration bill, all of which he is not remotely interested in, or at least he's not more interested in them than, making a lot of money. Making a lot of money. Huge. The trip to America is the latest in a busy schedule of speaking events for Johnson, which has seen him flit from Washington to New Delhi via New York. He's travelled to Singapore and back, stopping off in Mumbai last month before he was in Las Vegas and Los Angeles before travelling to Seoul last week. Paying for himself, his own travel, I'm sure. Each of the events pay him a 6-figure sum, with the highest single known amount for a speaking event, £277,723.89, from a bank in New York. And it's always plus travel and accommodation, of course. What on earth does he have to say to a bank that's worth £277,723.89? What could he tell them that they don't already know? Aren't you curious? I know I am. The telephone number sums of money, says The Independent, he is earning, has allowed the Johnson family to buy a 9-bedroom Grade 2 listed country manor house in the Cotswolds for a reported £3.8 million. Apparently it was paid for in cash. We just don't know whose cash. Shall we assume it's Boris's cash? Not sure. Despite his upturn in fortunes, the Johnsons continue to be supported by their benefactors, JCB tycoon Lord and Lady Bamford, who have allowed the family to use 2 of their properties since leaving Downing Street. It's like they've adopted him, like he's their pet. As of this May, they'll have the cleaners in trying to beat the stink out of the carpet. What have you done to it, Bodge? As of this May, Johnson's Register of Interest still lists the use of the Bamfords' £20 million London townhouse, spitting distance from Harrods in Knightsbridge, which is listed as being valued at £10,000 a month in rent. It's very expensive for those that can't afford it. Free to those that can.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah, free. They also enjoy the use of Lady Bamford's Cotswolds cottage, complete with a moat and tennis court, which is valued at £3,500 a month. They must love him, LUV. I mean, blimey. What on earth is happening in this country? Does anybody have any idea? Him least of all. He's never here, apart from anything else. Why are we paying for him? I mean, it's not an inconsiderable amount of money, is it? OK, it's not the kind of money that he would stand on his feet and do his 10-minute act for, being as it's only about 86 grand a year. But it does come with £250,000 worth of expenses and all the subsidised food and booze that you can consume. And I have to assume that he gets his money's worth. But, what are we paying him for? What do we get for all that money? Because he seems to be completely ignoring his, job. All this other stuff, these are side hustles. How are we putting up with this? Meanwhile, he's farmed out his whining for his minions to do on his behalf while he coins it in. What a way to run a country, eh?
Dreadful.
Come on, Fishy, get a grip.
Dreadful.
Come on, Fishy, get a grip.
I'm gripping it.
He is pre-gripping it for our convenience. Hull, Charles.
Oh, hi, Nick. Actually, you just sort of mentioned, Jilly Cooper's Riders book?
No, I don't.
Well, it was just mentioned a minute earlier.
Jilly Cooper was, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you see, I went out with a young lady who was a yoga teacher, and she said she read the book in bed with one hand. Well,
okay. All right. Thanks, Charles. I don't know where that's going, but I know I don't want to go there. Dagenham. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Nick. I think what is flying under the radar is, well, clearly it's come out of the open now that this right-wing American influence of the Conservative Party is clearly out in the open now. But the discussions about immigration and religion is just a wrapper that contains an agenda. Part of it includes the privatization of the National Health Service. And I think a lot of your viewers will probably forget that I think a couple of years ago, it was made clear that I think it was in Birmingham or somewhere up north that they've allowed gun shows. Now,
gun shows? What do you mean,
yes.
for the public or defence?
Yeah,
You're talking about defence?
No, not just for defence, not just like for the police or just gun shows.
The military.
Not just for the not for the military. Gun shows that the public can attend. Yes, and
I'm not familiar with that. What kind of gun shows?
Oh, these are gun shows you can go to and look at guns and probably purchase guns and so on and so forth. And then we're surprised that there's gun crime, not as mad as it is in America. We're surprised that gun crime occurs.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I'd be surprised if that were true. That we have the sort of gun shows that they do in America, because it's the rules and regulations about gun ownership are much more strict in this country.
Yeah, they are. But I think we've got a Trojan horse in this country, and the political influence that the Conservatives are coming under from the direction of America is also a Trojan horse.
Well, there's no doubt that the gun lobby in America is much more powerful than the actual amount of money that they make. They seem to have quite a tight grip on right-wing politics in the States, the gun lobby.
And that gun lobby has an influence in this country as well. We don't talk about it, and it's flying under the radar.
Glasgow, Eric.
Hi, Nick.
Hiya.
Listen, you're fantastic, pal. You're sharp as a tack. You should do one of them noises that goes in your computer and goes, bing, Nick is sharp as a tack, because you're at your highlight of your radio career.
Well,
anyway,
that's
right.
Very nice of you, Eric. What would you like to say on this subject?
I'll elaborate on what the gentleman was actually trying to imply in Glasgow, in north of Scotland, should we say, or mainly starting from Glasgow upwards, the green belt's starting to get built, Nick, with one-bedroom houses, one-bedroom accommodation. Now, don't get me wrong.
Is that right? One-bedroom house, not flat?
One-bedroom flats, right? And it's to accommodate, it's to kind of circuit. There's already people that are in Glasgow 7 or 8 people living in one-bedroom flats that are from different parts of the world, wherever they're from, God bless them.
Yeah.
Okay? But they're starting to build one-bedroom properties, so I think they're trying to accommodate, the councils and the governments are trying to accommodate massive amount of people to fit them all in one room, so they can do whatever they want to do and, go to work. But another thing is, just before I go, why don't they start building skyscrapers again?
Well, they kind of are. I mean, in some areas of London, that is precisely what they're doing.
Business with Tokyo, business with Japan, and Glasgow, and the rest of we can start building massive skyscrapers. They can go up to the moon, and by that time, the what's it called? That thing everybody's going about AI. What's it called?
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah, then they'll fly them in and give them your dinner.
That is something to look forward to. Dartford. Hello, Abdullah. Dartford.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes, Abdullah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no. Are you? I mean, I have to double check. Are you being facetious, or are you real when you say the only thing he's done is have an affair? Because that's quite, that's quite a shocking thing to say, really. Because
is it?
I mean, it'd be quite. Yeah, I mean, it'd be quite sad if we've reached the kind of level of moral depravity that we then think that having an affair and betraying the trust of your partner is not something that is.
I didn't say that. It's important to the person who is having the affair. It's important to the person that they're having personal interface with.
Disgusting.
And it's very important to the person that they happen to be married to at the time. But it's got nothing to do with us.
That is true, but I do also think that we do have a social responsibility as well, because ultimately it's you do if you.
All right, well, let me ask you this, Abdullah. Let's just cut to the chase. Who did you vote for in the last general election?
I voted Labour. Must have been Jamie Corbyn back then. Yeah, but I mean, I also, to be honest with you, I also don't agree with the idea that the only reason that there's an issue is just because he's gay. Because the reality is, when he came out as gay, everyone supported him.
Yeah, that's right. Until they knew that he was actually doing gay things, and then this sort of contract that we have with people on television. Oh, you can be gay just as long as you're not, gay. You can act all camp and that, and we love that. Because it's, it's like a flirtation with naughtiness, isn't it? I mean, we've had camp people on TV for as long as I can remember. And I always wondered, why? Why do, particularly in the 70s and the 60s, I mean, it used to be illegal-ish back then. I mean, I can't remember when, when the significant dates came in, but it used to be fairly illegal, pretty sure about that. And yet they were all over the radio and the TV. And it was like, like old ladies sitting in the audience going, oh, like that. But yeah, if you actually ask them about gay rights, they'd be, oh no, kill them all. So it's just mystifying to me why we've always had that and that sort of culture here on TV and the radio. We like camp just as long as you don't actually do anything about it. You can be gay, just don't, be gay. Let's talk to Jane in Alicante. Hello, Jane.
Oh, good evening, Nick.
Jane.
As always, thank you for your sanity. I would say that, but it's true.
Right.
I want to say also that your new glamorous assistant has got a lovely voice.
Uh-oh.
Oh, sorry, he has.
Okay, then.
And terribly polite, which is delightful.
Polite? Well, you got to be polite.
Be polite!
Exactly.
Absolutely, it costs nothing. The weather.
Yeah.
Yes, we went 5 months without any rain at all.
Blimey.
And that is so awful, Nick. I mean, I'm a bit of an elemental person myself.
You're a what?
Elemental. I like the wind, the rain, the nature, the thunder, the storms.
Oh, right.
We had nothing. We just had sun. It was just like a nightmare.
Isn't that what Spain is all about, though?
Well, yeah, but, oh my goodness, May has been delightful. We've had thunderstorms, we've had rain, we've had wind. Oh, and we're not sweating and we're not dying of the heat.
What's the temperature during the day there at the moment?
Oh, today was a very pleasant 22.
Right. Well, that is not bad. That's about perfect, I'd say.
I totally agree, Nick.
As long as it doesn't get cold in the evening. Because the beautiful thing about going on holiday, well, you don't really get it much in this country, is that you go out with just wearing a T-shirt, knowing that you don't need to take a coat with you and a jumper and all the rest of it for when the sun goes down, because it's going to stay warm, right?
But I'm like you, Nick. I don't go out. I sit on the balcony with a bottle of wine, which I've just bought for €2.50, which is a lovely red wine.
€2.50, and you
€2.50.
Right,
Nick,
you're gonna drink that, are you?
Oh, I'm sitting here now drinking it.
Right.
And I just stare outside, like when you go away and you don't go out.
Yeah, I would imagine that drinking too much of a wine that costs £2.50 or €2.50 a bottle. I mean, you'll be seeing cross-eyed in a short while.
No. This is. If you want it cheaper, you just go over the road and the barrel, and help yourself, and that's €1.20.
Oh, that is ridiculous. I mean, for €2.50, there can't be any price on the wine that's in the bottle. It must be all on the bottle and the label and the transport. You're not paying for wine at all.
Well, no, this is why I live here. Why do you think I moved here? Because
if I were you, I wouldn't stand up quickly. That's probably excellent advice. So am I. Don't make any sudden moves, Jane.
It's like,
very, very slowly.
You can go out and buy 4 bottles of decent wine for €10.
You can't. It's impossible.
Yes, you can.
No, you cannot do that. Decent is the operative word in that sentence. You cannot buy 4 bottles of decent wine for €10. Impossible. Cannot be done. Spend a little bit more, Jane. Go on, treat yourself. You're worth it.
No, hang on. Whoa. I'm telling you, I've got a wine here, which was a bit more expensive. It was €3, and I had to...
See, she just cut herself. That wasn't me who did that. She just cut herself off. That's what I'm saying. You're starting to see double. Once you see a haze coming off the tabletop there, Jane, that's an indication that you've had too much.
Booze.
A little bit too much of that cheap wine, which I would imagine also works as a kitchen cleaner. You pour it down the toilet and it removes all stubborn stains. Excellent value for money. Basingstoke. Hello, Daniel.
Hello. I'd love to discuss with you the points of why we are particularly selecting the religious angle of one part of a conference over anything else that was discussed there. Why are we so focused on whether or not certain members of a political party have a leaning towards one religion or the other? Over all the things were discussed there, why is religion the thing that's got you so emotional or enthralled, shall I say?
No, I think that everything that was said on this stage of that conference has emotional relevance to me. The religion part does seem to be weird to try to draw in more support from a country that is rejecting religion more with every passing year.
I don't disagree with you that we are becoming less religious. However, people are entitled to their opinion, and they're bearing in mind that the Tory party's typical demographic of appeal is those of an older age or those of wealth who are usually more religious than others. It wouldn't seem abnormal of them to perhaps target that voter base, bearing in mind that they have severely annoyed the middle and working class or the centre ground, bearing in mind we seem to be taxing them significantly more and more. Therefore, you would appeal to a voter base that may make you more likely to succeed if that's what you wanted to do. Or you'd put Dishy Rishi, who we seem to have completely forgot about the fact that is a member of the World Economic Forum, as is our king. Is it not slightly odd that we've got individuals who would like to turn us all into a point-scoring China, and we've already been conditioned to believe that's necessary, given the fact we all need to have an alert system on our phones just in case there might be an earthquake when we're not on a fault line, or a tsunami might hit the United Kingdom and we'll all be washed away.
Well, there's people in Devon who are at risk of being washed away every time rain falls out of the sky. So, there's conspiracy theories about the alert system. If you can switch it off, then I wouldn't be that concerned. I think there's other things that are more concerning than some thing on your phone that you can turn off as soon as it alerts you to whatever it is that is coming your way. But thanks for that. Joining me now to discuss Labour's hard line on immigration is Peter Edwards. Peter is a Labour commentator and former editor of Labour List. Hello, Peter.
Good evening.
So what were your thoughts then when you read these comments in the papers today?
Well, first of all, I think Labour shadow ministers should be in so-called kind of right-wing newspapers and right-wing outlets every weekend, because, you know, you have to convert the voters into your cause if you ever get into government. But I think we all know that Labour over the last 20 years has suffered a loss of public trust on immigration. Polling in the last 6 months looks like it's winning that back, but we know whether because of Brexit or COVID-related labour shortages or perhaps lingering attitudes about immigration and the Labour Party, it's going to be a defining issue for the opposition when it comes into the general election.
Right. It's a bit difficult, though, to actually stake your claim to this particular patch of ground, though, isn't it? I mean, this is the Tories thing.
No, I wouldn't say that. And I've campaigned for Labour around the country, and I think immigration comes up in different places, and people just want what they call a system that works. But obviously, there's a massive spectrum of opinion on what it means. But the story in the paper today was essentially about what's called a shortage list, and we have a points-based system, but how the government of the day can hurry up or carry out certain shortcuts to bring in workers in particular industries. And we know, for example, in the last 2 years, HGV drivers have been one of them. But then once particular professions or trades are on that list, they tend to stay there. So the starting point is kind of pragmatic. It's not about ideology or Brexit. It's just about fitting the supply and demand of labour. And I think when you knock on doors, voters are non-ideological about it. They just want the work. But Labour will quite understandably be lashed to the mast by certain newspapers in the run-up to the election not about the detail, but really about the ideological starting point and, you know, what an immigration policy would mean.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the shortage occupation list. I looked at it today. There's things like architects and chemical scientists on it. And, you know, fair enough, if we don't have enough of those, then we're going to have to get them from elsewhere. Not everyone can be an architect or a chemical scientist. But then there's artists on the shortage occupation list. Artists who earn £16,400 a year, or dancers at £16,960 a year, which aren't really things that you can make people do by removing their benefits. They either are or aren't artists. The actual occupation list seems a bit bizarre.
Well, I think certainly they're unusual, and we think of, you know, what do we do to make the... We tend to think of men and women in hard hats building stuff, don't we, or inventors creating stuff. But of course, the creative industries have been a fantastic export for governments over the last 20 years or so. I mean, but it goes to your other point, which is kind of, it's one of these boring policy things, but actually quite important about how do you get the workforce fit for 20 years' time, whether it's about more people in dancing or genome sequencing or AI. And again, it's a kind of ideological debate, but it comes back to these kind of pragmatic policy points. And I can tell you, having been a Labour activist for 20 years, you know, people aren't particularly debating sectors and generally not the performing arts on the doorstep. But it does kind of leap from this kind of detailed Whitehall debate to essentially two things: a debate about numbers and a debate about attitudes and assimilation.
Right, on the numbers thing, the number of vacancies is almost the same as the number of unemployed, and so that is rather sort of attractive proposition for a politician, I would imagine, to marry those two things. But the jobs that are available aren't with the ones that I've mentioned, dancers and artists. I mean, these are very small numbers. The highest percentage of businesses experiencing worker shortages are those who are in accommodation and food services. Now, those aren't high-skilled, high-wage jobs, are they? So it sounds a bit like Labour are now going to try to force people into dead-end jobs that they don't want to do.
No, I've not seen any suggestion of that at all. And a government can't force anyone into a particular type of job. The government can create incentives or disincentives through the welfare system about getting back into work, full stop. But the government can't force anyone into a particular that's an unduly negative way of putting it. But again, what's the starting point? After COVID, we've got this massive shortage in particular industries. I think there's something like 40,000 vacancies in the NHS. HGV drivers was another one. And any government needs to kind of get a grip on this to help the economy grow, to ensure that our public services are well staffed, and of course to ensure that we're not acting unscrupulously by taking labour, particularly nurses, from developing nations where they might have significant health challenges of their own. But I think your question, although I don't agree with it, it goes to the heart of why this is a challenge for Labour, because it's about attitudes on immigration and numbers, and it's about pressure on public services, that queue to see your local GP. But then, of course, it's about assimilation and what a town can feel like if there's been a big and sudden change in the population. And I think that these are the big things up in every general election once we kind of zoom out from the policy detail of the points-based system.
Okay, well, I find it difficult then to sort of square this circle, because if people are not going to be, maybe I misspoke, perhaps the word forced is not quite right, but if their benefits are going to be removed from them or decreased if they don't comply, then how are these jobs in accommodation and food services, for instance, and the care sector, how are they going to be filled if you don't bring people in from outside?
Well, I think that's a great question, isn't it? Because there are so many retailers now and so many, particularly restaurants and hospitality, that are struggling even to survive. We've got fewer restaurants than 5 years ago. And it's not something I pretend I have the answer to, but lots of restaurants, for example, are accredited for London Living Wage or Living Wage nationally. So wages are one of their biggest costs, but their income is coming back extremely slowly after COVID lockdown, and that's why you constantly hear ministers talking about growing the economy, because your question's really hard to answer. So that's why the Chancellor comes back to, well, if we can increase the size of the pie, full stop, then the pie can be divided up a bit more fairly by wages. Then those wages go back into the economy. But it is really, really tough, and I think you're completely right to kind of challenge the parties on that. Well, yeah, but I wonder what the answer from the Labour Party is, because they're saying that we don't want people coming from abroad in such large numbers. We want these jobs to be filled. We want British people to do these jobs, but British people have decided en masse that they don't want to do these jobs. They either can't do them, or they're doing better jobs for more money. So how are you going to fill the restaurant trade, the hotel trade, the caring industry, and all of these jobs that we Brits don't want to do? How are you going to fill them unless you bring in foreign workers? Well, it's going to be a couple of things, and they're going to be quite slow. So I think, first of all, you've got to remove some of the crueler elements of the welfare system and incentives and punitive measures that have grown up under the Tories, particularly since the coalition. Secondly, Labour nearly always goes into a general election promising incentives for business to offer fair pay. We've got the national living wage, a George Osborne thing that's not really a living wage at all. I'd imagine Labour will have a lot more to say about the real living wage, for exactly the reason you suggest, to try and tempt people back into the hospitality sector and the retail sector and so on. And I think the other one will be the SME movement, small and medium-sized enterprises, very Labour Party, and there's a ginger group solely on that topic. I'd imagine they'll have a lot of incentives for small businesses to grow, because that's what so many of those retailers and hotels and restaurants are, to try and, again, increase the size of the pie so that it can be divided up a bit more fairly economically.
Well, that's
a 3-point answer for you then.
That sounds lovely. I'm not holding my breath. That's that there's going to be a redistribution of wealth anytime soon under either party, really. I mean, if they were going to do that, it would have happened already. But
briefly, higher pay for people at the lowest bit of the workforce is good for everyone. It's good for them. It's good for other taxpayers because they're not being topped up by tax credits, and it's good for the wider economy because that money's recycled in good old Keynesian fashion.
I agree with you. Then why are the Labour Party seemingly not keen on giving teachers and NHS workers a real terms pay increase? why would people choose to do those jobs if they can earn more doing something less stressful? And if the Labour Party, I know this is multiple questions, but if the Labour Party are keen on raising people's level of income, then why aren't they supporting the nurses on their strikes?
Simple reason: affordability. I think Labour are keen because what is a real terms pay rise? You know, to the man or woman in the street, that is just having flat pay. And not you, but some parts of the print media talk about this stonking pay rise and nurses asking for 19%. But when food price inflation was 18 point something, that is flat pay. So I think probably all politicians want that, but they know it's not affordable. And, you know, you can spend another half an hour talking about why the economy isn't growing sufficiently, but that is the reason. It's totally about affordability. Labour, of course, don't want to be seen anywhere near strikes, much like most political parties, but they do want fair pay, and they do want industrial...
But it's the Labour Party. It just seems odd that they're not supporting the workers.
They are. First of all, because... having fair pay is absolutely the heart of what the Labour Party is about. Labour Party introduced a national minimum wage, after all, in the 1990s, when people were still being paid £1 an hour to work in the supermarket. The Tory government...
Right, so you think that Keir Starmer's refusal to back the strikers, who are just after a wage that is not a decrease on what they were earning 10 years ago, you think his refusal is... it is about the optics of it. He actually supports them, but he just doesn't want to say he does.
I think it's more complex than that. I think he absolutely supports them, and I think, again, that so does a man or woman in the street, and there was polling showing general level of public support for certainly for NHS staff pausing a few weeks. And I say that having been in a trade union for about 20 years, and I've been on strike as well. And what I say to you is, people go on strike with the greatest reluctance because you're giving up a day's pay, a week's pay. That there is no salary if you're on strike. But I think for Keir Starmer, it's always a horrible question for the Labour leader of the opposition. What do you think about strikes? If they say we're for them, they'll be hammered for bringing the economy to a standstill. If you say we're against them, then there's challenge quite understandably from people on low pay. And if you say nothing, sitting on the fence can be quite uncomfortable, but I completely understand.
It's so depressing. I mean, OK, so he seems to be rigid with fear, like stuck in the headlights of an approaching car, not knowing which way to go. And this is why people have just so had it with politics. Can't the man just say what he feels rather than what he thinks will go down well in the right-wing papers?
No, I don't think that's fair at all. When you think about the first couple of years of his leadership, he took very strong stands on things like whether it's COVID lockdowns, tough action on anti-Semitism, dealing with some Labour rule changes, and so on and so on. Remember, Rishi Sunak has his own topics, like net migration, that he's not comfortable giving a clear view on either way. That's just the nature of frontline politics. There are always going to be some questions that hurt you more than your rival.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think he's been sitting on the fence.
Okay. Just going back to the headline, which was that businesses are addicted to low-wage foreign labour. Isn't it a bigger picture than that? Isn't it that the public are addicted to the low costs of goods that cheap foreign labour produces?
I've got some sympathy for that point of view. I wouldn't use the word addicted at all. But, you know, I'm just over 40. In my lifetime, we've all got used to certain things becoming a bit cheaper. Although we've had a horrible time in terms of food inflation the last 2 years, food is certainly a bit more affordable than 30 or 40 years ago. Many retail goods are a bit more affordable, and they're obviously, because of the internet, much more quickly available. One of the things that's gone completely the other direction is, of course, housing as well as transport. But yeah, I mean, personal debt is another thing that doesn't get written about, but we are used to having more goods more quickly and generally having the resource to pay for them, and that's why personal debt has increased in my lifetime.
Yes, the acquisitive nature of humankind is not something that's about to stop any time soon, and addiction is not a bad word, really, because we do seem to be addicted to cheap food, cheap electricity, cheap electrical goods, rather, and cheap holidays, and cheap travel, and so on and so on and so on. And all of these things are predicated on using foreign labour, either in this country or offshoring our manufacturing to where labour is cheap. And it's a bit hard to get around that if the answer is to train up more expensive labour, because by that method the price of everything is going to go up.
No, I wouldn't say acquisitive culture, and I wouldn't say addicted. To give an example, if it cost me £400 to fly me and a family member from London, Scotland and back again, and I could get to continental Europe for half that sum, that's just a reflection of technology and buying stuff over the internet rather than anyone being acquisitive or addicted to stuff. I think my worry is, we're in a cost of living crisis, which means because wages haven't gone up, people are struggling to get by, and it's so much harder when food inflation is 18% just to keep the show on the road economically. And of course the other one is when house prices in the last 30 years have absolutely raced ahead of inflation, then mortgage repayments, particularly when interest rates are rising, can become crippling overnight, and that will be terrifying for people with mortgages and incredibly depressing for younger folk who haven't even got one yet.
OK, good to talk to you, Peter. Peter Edwards, Labour commentator, former editor of Labour List. Maidenhead, Gary.
Oh, hello, Nick. I've just been watching two cats squaring up with each other, but I spoke to you before. I'm the chap that lives in the car, yeah. So but I've come to the conclusion after hearing all the different things in the radio and in the papers and that the British people, once you had the right to buy in the 80s, too many people now have just become little capitalists, if you see what I mean. And when I started work in the 70s, you could go on a building site. There was hardly any regulations, and people, you used to do labouring and all them sort of jobs.
I know. I did those jobs myself. But what has this got to do with what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, because I think what the Labour Party are doing now is a lot of the people in the Labour Party, some of the MPs, are for the working people, but I think most people will vote Labour just like to get the Conservatives out and hope that things get better. But
I mean, what do you make of them picking this particular fight with the Conservative Party? Because it seems like it's the Conservative Party's area. It's their land, isn't it? Why are they picking this particular fight?
Because he wants to make the people happy enough to vote for him. Right. And then once they get in, they'll probably be it's the same that I heard on the radio today. There'll be no more drilling in the North Sea. I mean, it'll all change back. He just wants to get in, and hopefully he'll do a lot better for the country than what we've had the last 13 years. But
it's pretty depressing that after 13 years, or if that is the case, that all they can think of as a way to get into power is to lie to us about what they're going to do if we vote for them. If that is the truth of it, what you've just described, then that is pretty depressing.
Business. I narrow my eyes like a coin slot, baby. Let her ring. Let her ring. God shall win. God shall win. God shall win on business. God shall